Hello everyone, welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host Paula Taylor and this is episode 146. So if you enjoy the show, if you enjoy this content, if you enjoy the guided meditations and healing sessions that I offer every week, I encourage you to check out my website, which is paulataylorenergy.com. You can learn more about my services. I offer one-on-one services virtually and in person. So coaching services, energy, and sound healing. I do all of that virtually as well as in person. And then I do physical body work in person as well as energy work and coaching. And if you're interested in learning about my upcoming events, at the bottom of every page of my website, there's a subscribe. I don't send out spam. I pretty much send out about one newsletter a month. Sorry, somebody just popped up and distracted me. I send out one newsletter a month, just letting you know what's coming up. And it's a great way to just kind of get your finger on the pulse of what's happening at Paula Taylor Energy. So tonight we're going to talk about shifting energetic density. And this is a topic, this idea of energetic density, it keeps coming up. This has been an energetically dense month. And the result of that is kind of this feeling of a lot of chaos and loss of control in our lives, kind of just unexpected things happening. And I've talked to multiple people, clients, family members, and they keep coming back to this idea of energetic density and this affirmation about I easily release energetic density from my body and energetic fields. So I decided to just do the whole show on this tonight because it's come up so much with different people that it's clearly something that we are all needing to talk about and kind of understand. I feel like I've gotten into this series ever since I talked about energetic literacy. We're talking about different aspects of energy work that I think most people don't necessarily understand or recognize because they don't work with it as often as I do. But knowing these things can be really helpful, especially when we're navigating kind of all the ups and downs and these big shifts that have been happening, that are increasing, that are going to continue to increase. So let's start with the basics. What is energetic density? What am I talking about? And it's interesting because when I first started, this phrase kind of came into my mind. I was actually thinking that it was kind of interchangeable with the term I use often, muddiness. And I don't like the word healing because there's some connotations to that are not my favorite. I've talked about that a lot on the show. I like to talk about clarity, harmony, and expansion. And you can go back and listen. There was a show I did fairly recently called The Holy Trinity of Healing. I talked about those three things. I've talked about this repeatedly. We're not going to go into that in depth tonight. But one of the aspects of healing that we're usually looking for is clarity, is getting rid of muddiness. I talk a lot about muddy vibrations versus clear vibrations. And I think that's an aspect of energetic density, but it's not the whole thing. There's something more to it. So absolutely, energetic density is opaque. It's muddy. It's something that's difficult to see through. And sometimes it's something that's actually hiding in our body or energetic field. It's like camouflaged. If you think about something that's camouflaged, so you've got this muddiness in your field, but you don't even necessarily know it's there. And I think one of the tricky things about energetic density is that the longer it's there, the denser it gets, and the harder it is to find and the harder it is to shift. And when we have these big influxes of energy, as we've been having over the past 6 months or so, it starts to bring some awareness to that density. But if we don't understand kind of what it is and where it came from and how to shift it, then we can just end up feeling really overwhelmed, and then that anxiety starts coming in because there's energy bouncing around and it's hitting these kind of pockets of density within the energetic body, within our physical body, and in the fields around it, and it causes all sorts of discomfort. It causes anxiety and emotional upset and feelings like trauma gets stirred up and all this stuff starts happening. So when I was thinking about this from an energetic perspective, from an anatomy, because that's really what we've been talking about in the last few episodes, is different aspects of energetic anatomy. So you can learn about physical anatomy, you can learn about energetic anatomy. There's books for that too, but most of us get taught like a little bit like a basic level. We have a basic literacy of physical anatomy. You maybe took a health class and it gave you a basic, my heart's on the left side of my chest, and then my lungs are in the chest, and then there's a diaphragm, and all of my organs are here. Most of us have like some basic understanding of that, maybe not as much as would be helpful for us, but at least a little bit. But most of us have almost no knowledge of energetic anatomy. And just like with, I don't need as much physical anatomy knowledge as a surgeon who's gonna, like the person who actually went in and took my uterus out, they sure need to know where my uterus is and what are all the blood vessels that are connected to it and all of that stuff. I don't need to have that level of knowledge. Even as an ultrasound tech, I didn't need to have as in-depth a level of knowledge of anatomy as someone like a surgeon. So there's levels of literacy here, just like we talked about a couple weeks ago, and that was a great show. I do highly encourage that you go back and listen to that show. So when we're talking about density, what I'm talking about is, first of all, that muddiness. This is an area that is opaque, that is hard to see through. There's no clarity there. There's that aspect of it. But we're talking about something that actually has a physical manifestation, usually in the body, and that is because it is the result of energetic stagnation and energetic holding. And those words sound fairly similar, but they mean different things. So let me define those, and then I'm actually going to tell a story. I haven't told a story in a while, so I have a story to kind of illustrate this tonight. There's just been so much going on, like I couldn't grab one story to like illustrate a point because there was just like too much in my field to even think about that. So I'm excited to have kind of a fun story to share. So what is energetic stagnation? So stagnation literally means not moving. And the idea, the image of that is this idea of like a pool of water, like a swamp. It gets all that scummy stuff on the top of it, unlike a river, which is flowing, and so the water tends to be clearer. So basically, stagnation is the opposite of flow. You've got flowing energy. That's what we want in our body, in our fields all the time. We want constant flow, constant movement. Sometimes it's slower, sometimes it's faster, but we want movement in just about every aspect of our being. Stagnation is the opposite of that. Stagnation is when something gets stuck. Now, what is holding? Because that sounds fairly similar. Holding is also stuck energy. There's an overlap there. But holding is when we are holding on to energy that there is a reason we are afraid to let go of. There's a reason we're holding on to it. So stagnation, holding is kind of a form of stagnation. I think I would put it that way, because you can have stagnation for all sorts of reasons. I could get a physical injury in my shoulder, and now I've got some stagnation in my shoulder because I kind of pulled my energy back because it hurt. And so the energy's not flowing in and through my shoulder. So that is an example of stagnation that is not the same thing as holding. An example of holding is, a lot of people have a lot of holding in the heart and the belly. And what happens with holding is there's usually an emotional sort of traumatic feeling or memory that's holding the energy there. So something happened to me. I couldn't process it in the moment. I was like, I'll deal with this later. Unconsciously, this is how this usually works. I shoved it into a part of my body and now it's stuck there. So it is stagnant. It is not moving. But part of the reason it's not moving is because I'm holding on to it. Because if I stop holding on to it and I look at it, I'm afraid of that. I'd have to actually process that. So holding is usually more a result of being unable to process something that happened to you, a traumatic event, an emotion that you're uncomfortable with. I'm going to talk more about that when I get into my story here. So this idea of energetic density, and this is just my definition, and again, I work with people all the time, and right now, there is a lot of density going on. And I think what's happening is actually there's not more density, we're more aware of it because of all this energy that's coming in. We're shining a light on things, and it's kind of like, you shine your light in the corner of the room and you haven't looked for a while and you're like, yeah, there's a bunch of like cobwebs and dust over there and I haven't really looked at that. That's kind of what's happening with this density. We're becoming more aware of the density that we're holding, and it's making us uncomfortable, which is a good thing because that is an impetus. inspiration for us to change. But we've got to know how to do that. We've got to know how to shift energetic density. And the first thing I'm going to say before I launch into my story and we talk kind of about how to move this is that energetic density is generally a result of trauma. It's generally, like I said, it's got an aspect of holding to it. So something happened to you, you weren't able to process it in the moment, and you're holding on to it. So of all the things that I talk about, this is one that you probably need help with. You probably need to reach out to someone like me to help you move that energetic density. And a lot of times what happens is when we start to get that energetic density to shift, when we start to get some movement, when we start to get that pattern of holding to release a little bit, you might also need a mental health professional to kind of hold space for you to process, to mentally process whatever it is that's coming up. Sometimes that's not necessary. Sometimes we do body work, we do energy work, we do sound healing, and we're able to process and move. We're able to shift that energetic density together. I'm holding the space, I'm assisting you, but you're doing the work. If, let's say, we're in a one-on-one session. So we get this energetic density to move. Sometimes it takes multiple sessions. That's another thing that I have this discussion with people a lot. It's like, if it took you 40 years to kind of build up this density, it's probably going to take more than one session to shift that pattern. But it's absolutely possible. But again, of all the things I talk about, and we're going to do a meditation tonight to kind of work with some energetic density, but I am going to just kind of add a little disclaimer now. You will probably need help with this, especially if it's long-standing, especially if it's related to a fairly deep trauma. The denser the area, the longer it's been there, and probably the more charged the emotion is. So when it comes up, it can be really, really uncomfortable. So all that being said, let me tell you my story, which kind of actually illustrates everything I was just talking about. So I went to get some body work yesterday with my friend Emily Heed here in Tucson, who's fantastic. She does craniosacral therapy, and she's got a lot of great techniques to physically support and energetically support the body. And what usually happens for me is when I book a session, I have an idea of kind of what's going on, what I need help with. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm just like, I need a session, and I go in. But a lot of times it's like, there's something going on and I can't quite get to it myself. And again, that is, I needed help with this. I could feel the density, but I couldn't figure out like what was causing it or where it was coming from. And it was getting more and more and more physically uncomfortable. So what was happening in my physical body was that I was having a lot of pain and tension pretty much all the way along the back side of my body. And it was particularly bad kind of right around my tailbone, my sacrum region, down into my thighs, my quads, and then sort of up the spine to my neck. And, you know, I have discomfort. Everybody has discomfort. I have holding patterns. I've had this holding pattern in my thighs that I'll talk about because it kind of, this is what the story is about, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. But this felt different. It was not improving. All of the techniques that I use, nothing was getting better. I sat in my hot tub. That's like number one thing, because I thought I could feel the density there. And I thought, oh, I've just picked up some energy, or, you know, I'm holding on to something. So I've had a lot of emotional stuff to process this month. So it's like, oh, well, some of those emotions kind of got trapped and it's time to move them. And so I did a lot of the things that I would normally do to shift that energy in it. And the pain was actually getting worse. And that's a really good sign that it's time to reach out for help. When you reach the end of your tools and you're not sure where to go, that's a good time to be like, I might need some help with this. And luckily it kind of worked out in my schedule that I was able to schedule this session. And so I went over and I said to Emily, you know, I don't know what's going on. I explained kind of the physical pain, but I also kind of did know what's going on by the time I got over there. That's the other thing. When you ask for help, when you reach out, when the universe feels that you're ready to move, that you're ready to shift the density, sometimes you will start to get information. And what happens, it's this idea that, you know, in the social media post I made for this show, I posted a giant rock and somebody's kind of like pushing this giant rock. And the idea is just the intention to address this density shifts that rock ever so slightly. And so what happened was before I even got into the session, like, I was like, what is going on with this? And I knew there was a bunch of emotional stuff kind of happening this month. And I was thinking about trauma. I had some trauma that's been stirred up from childhood and some things that were going on. And I thought, oh, well, it's probably related to that. And I wasn't really sure exactly what. And this is a really good story that kind of illustrates how potent and powerful energy work is, because of the excavation that we do. I talk about spiritual excavation all the time. So what happens is, especially when you've got long-standing patterns of density, so I keep rubbing my hands on my quads here. So ever since I was a little kid, I can remember my thighs aching when I was tired, when I was sick, when I was overwhelmed. My thighs, like along kind of the outside of my thighs, they would just get really achy. And then of course I had years of endometriosis where I had kind of really bad uterine cramps that went all the way through the bowel and all the way down into my legs and up into my low back. And so I've had a lot of pain and discomfort and achiness in my quads for years, and to the point where sometimes it wakes me up in the morning and they're just really achy, and I just can't get comfortable enough to go back to sleep. But this was different. This was like, it was really, again, it was kind of going, I said to my husband, I feel like I'm having an endometriosis flare up, and there's no endometriosis left in there. So like, I'm not sure what's going on. Plus it was going all the way up. It's funny, even while I'm talking about it, like the lower part of my neck is kind of like, do we have to bring this up again? So some of the trauma stuff that was coming up, and this is where the excavation comes in, that's really interesting and kind of important to note, and why you might need help with this. So I knew there was trauma stuff coming up. I knew it was related to my dad, who has since passed away. But I was like focused on childhood, and I was like, and there were things coming up, and I was processing them and like remembering some memories that I was like, oh yeah, I wished my dad had come to my gymnastics meets. That was which was a weird thing to focus on, but that was like the one thing that was really kind of coming up, and I was having feelings about it. And I thought, well, what is it about that? And I was like digging into the emotions around that. And that's kind of where Emily and I started. I came and I said, well, this is kind of what's going on. And she was kind of holding space, and I was sort of digging around in my emotional field trying to figure out what is this and where did it come from, and where it went was someplace totally unexpected. And that is how this excavation work happens. This is why I think it's so magical. It's also why it's so effective, and it's also a really good example of what I'm talking about when we're talking about density, because there are layers, just like that rock I posted. You have these striations, you have layer upon layer upon layer. So absolutely, there was a layer there of childhood trauma and kind of feeling like I wish that I had more attention for my dad and that he was more involved with my activities and with my life and things. That was absolutely there. That was the layer that I could kind of excavate myself, that I was already sort of working on when I got into the session. But then it turned out there were so many layers below that really just kind of blew my mind and led me to decide to discuss this tonight. This is the thing that is so mind-blowing about this work, and why I do this work specifically as opposed to any other type of quote-unquote healing work. I've talked multiple times about why I didn't become a psychologist. There was a layer of childhood trauma from this life. Underneath that layer was a layer of multiple layers of ancestral karma, ancestral trauma that I was carrying that was adding to this density. And I don't want to get too far down the road of science. And honestly, I don't know the science well enough to really know what I'm talking about, other than I know that science has shown that we do actually physically carry ancestral trauma I think it's in the mitochondria of the cells, and it's passed down through the mother to child. And they've actually done research on this. So this is not just some woo-woo thing I'm talking about. And the density was much more dense because there's just this little layer of this lifetime. And then underneath that, there was this layer of this ancestral trauma that came up, and what came up, and I'm trying to decide how, because I could go way far down this road. essentially what came up was this feeling of kind of shame that I felt that had been passed down to me. And when I got really far back, I've known for like a long time that my psychic gifts came from that side of my family. And I used the word psychic here on purpose. I do not like that word. Now I understand why I do not like that word. I've never liked that word. It's always had kind of a negative charge or a negative connotation for me. I much prefer the word intuitive. So as we got into this sort of layer of this density, this deeper, denser layer of this energetic density that I'm physically holding in my body, in my quads, that was kind of coming up the back, I started to have this kind of open line of communication with that side of my family. And what I saw was that they were gifted psychics, and they used that gift, and I got this feeling of kind of a nomadic lifestyle, or like they went around and sort of, you know, almost like carnival people or whatever. They went around, or like Romani, they went around and sort of offered their gifts, and they were treated very poorly because of it. And I have no idea if there's any truth in this. I don't know anything about that side of my family, which I think is interesting. When I did genealogy research, I couldn't find anything, which actually they were moving around a lot, kind of makes sense. But I mean, before they came to this country, I have history from that, and then beyond that, I have nothing. I know where they came from, and that's about it. And it's interesting, I've been reading about it, and someday maybe I'll get more. Again, I could go really far down that road, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about energetic density. So as I looked back, I saw I was gifted with this information from this side of the family, that there was this kind of, they were very persecuted for being psychic, for having these gifts, for using these gifts, and they were chased out of places even. I mean, you know, they were like chased out of town with pitchforks. It's kind of the image that I got. I'm not sure if that's what happened, but that was the feeling of it. And so somewhere along the way, somebody was like, I am not doing this anymore. I am not living this lifestyle. I can't live like this, and I want to be a quote unquote normal person. And they came to America. And in this kind of vision that I was given, whoever made the decision to come to this country, to America, first of all, cut the roots completely that they had in this area of Poland, I think is where it was. It's actually called Kashubia. I've been reading a lot about it. So the connection to the earth was lost. Purposely. They purposely were like, I want nothing to do with this magic that I'm drawing from this place, this power that's flowing through me. I don't want to be a freak anymore, is kind of the feeling. So they cut their ties with the earth itself. They came to America, and they were like, I'm just going to be a normal person, and I'm not going to do this anymore. And they shoved all this stuff down into my thighs. Into probably their bodies that got passed down into my body. And it was such an interesting sensation, because as we started to get into this and find the root of this density that was sort of almost, I don't know what you call, almost camouflaged by the childhood trauma, which was absolutely there and something I needed to process. And that's another thing. What came up was a lot of anger, and I have a really hard time with anger. I was sort of trained as a child not to express anger, and a lot of women are trained not to express anger. And it tends to turn inward and kind of turn into depression. So that is a good example. I was talking about holding, and how a lot of times when we're holding an emotion we don't want to feel. And I'm pretty comfortable with most emotions at this point. I've done a lot of work with grief. I've done a lot of work with fear. I've done a lot of work with all of most of the emotions that are uncomfortable. But anger and rage kind of get me, because I'm always, I'm a good person, and I have compassion, and I want to forgive these people. And so I have a hard time, sort of like Emily kept trying to get me to kind of express my rage. And I was like, but I understand why this happened, and I understand how they felt. And it's like, but you've still got to feel the feeling. If you want to get that density moved, if you want to shift it, if you want to transform it and release it or alchemize it, whatever word you want to use, you've got to confront the emotion. You've got to feel the emotion. So we had a really nice session, and we did all this. I mean, all this information was coming in, and it was really, really cool and interesting. And then I went and I did my monthly sacred sound journey, and it really like stirred up all the anger that I was having a hard time accessing. And I came home last night and I was just like, rah, 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 rah. All the anger was coming up, and then it kind of turned in that corner into like just feeling really kind of tired and depleted, and sort of like I usually do when I feel angry. And then I kind of feel guilty after. I feel shameful about being angry. But as I was lying in bed last night, I was thinking about all of this stuff, and I was feeling, and I got myself distracted, but it was such an interesting sensation when she was working on me, and the way craniosacral works, which is one of the things I love it, especially when combined with Reiki, which is what I've been learning craniosacral this year, and then I use it with my Reiki. The work continues for about 72 hours after. So you've got about 3 days of this shift that continues. So I was lying in bed last night, and I was like, I could feel, just like when she was working on me, like as I explored this density, as I shone my light on the density and was like, okay, I'm ready to see it. I'm ready to feel the emotion. I'm ready to feel the anger. I'm ready to be angry at my ancestor who cut me off from the land that I was meant to be on. And instead of bringing that with them, instead of bringing those gifts with them, tried to run away from them. And that resulted in generations of addiction. Generations of addiction. My father was an alcoholic. His father was an alcoholic. I'm willing to bet there's 2 or 3 generations back where there was a lot of addiction. My grandmother on that side had a problem with food, and so did my aunt. Like, there's just, because when you shove energy down, especially intuitive energy, it will come back up, and you have to keep shoving and shoving and shoving and shoving. And one of the ways we do that is with addiction. So I had a lot of anger and rage coming up, and I could feel it. But what I could also feel was this physical sensation of lightness, of the density leaving my body, of energy beginning to flow down my legs in a way I'd never felt before. It was like very foreign. It felt very foreign. I had like no word for a second there, because this density has been there my entire life. And it gets worse with time. And finally, this is my time to look at the density. This is what we're being asked to do collectively right now. Where's the density in your field? Where's the density in your body? What is it? That's always a big step in this, any kind of energetic work. What is this? And it doesn't have to be a specific memory or a specific emotion. In this case, it kind of does, especially when it's something this deep. Sometimes it's just like, ooh, that's a black blob of yuck, and it's in my leg. And like, all we need to do is figure that out, and then we can kind of work with it and get it to kind of move through and release. But a lot of times, especially with trauma work, we do have to know, what is this? Where did it come from? What's the emotion that's attached to it? We've got to do that processing work. And so as this energy started to move, and Emily was holding beautiful space for me in that session, it was like I could feel this density coming out of my legs. I could feel this like heavy sort of just muddiness, this like opaque, heavy kind of grossness, like lifting out of my body. And even while I was lying in bed last night, as soon as I focused back on it again, it would lift back out of my body. I could feel it coming out of my heart space. I could feel it coming out of my legs. I could feel it kind of unwinding all the way like up and down my spine. And it was just such a good example of what I'm talking about. What is energetic density? How can we shift it? How can we work with it? And what's the reward of that? So the reward of that, which is going to take a while to kind of come in fully, I think, for me, is, first of all, I've reconnected to my ancestral land of that. I mean, we've got lots of ancestral lands because we've got lots of ancestors, but I've always felt like disconnected from the earth. I've had a hard time grounding. I've had a hard time feeling like I belong here. And as soon as this started shifting, it was like I can feel this line. I keep making a line with my hand because I can feel it going to this particular land. And someday I hope I will get to go there and visit. But even if I don't, I've got a connection now there, and I can feel the power of the earth in that space that my ancestors were using to bring these gifts up. And it's so interesting to me because I say this all the time on the show. I like to be in the spiritual plane. I like to deal with the light. We call light in. That is my specialty. That is where I like to live. But this showed me the aspect of myself I've been missing, which is this connection to the earth, which is how to call the energy in from the earth, which is how to bring the magic of the earth up and use it and connect these two beautiful planes together for even more potency, even more power in what I do. And so, yes, I was very angry and filled with rage because they blocked that energy from me. And they didn't do it like, I'm gonna screw up my descendant by, blocking this energy. They did it for themselves. Somebody made a decision for themselves. And it was such a powerful decision that it was like it put this block in every single person who's come after them, including my dad, and he passed it to me. And part of this session was, because he's still very close with me, was me asking him to back off and telling him that I'm safe. And this feeling of not being safe was passed down through this block. This feeling of, I don't belong here. I'm going to be persecuted. I'm going to be literally chased out of town. I have had a feeling like that my entire life. And I was bullied, and, it gets played out. These patterns, it's not the same pattern. I'm not in like a covered wagon or whatever, going from town to town and then getting chased out with a pitchfork. I'm going to school and being the weird kid and being bullied into ending up by myself. I mean, that is a pattern that is repeating. And when I was working with my dad on this, it was like, you need to trust me. I am safe. I know how to take care of myself, and I deserve access to this lineage. I deserve access to this energy. And it is not your place to tell me it's not safe and I can't have it. And so it was just a really powerful experience of, first of all, the excavation, right? Because this started out like, Dad, I wish you'd come to my gymnastics meets. Which is a completely legitimate trauma to process, by the way. I'm laughing just because it went in such a different direction. Like, if that was the whole density, I would have dealt with that density. But that is kind of how this works. And that is how these things get compounded over time, over generations. We've got ancestral lineage. We've got past life karma, and all of that stuff can play a part in this density, and it has a physical ramification. And that is one of the reasons that I'm doing this, what ends up kind of being a series on energetic literacy, is that whether you believe this or not, it is affecting you. I guarantee anybody watching or listening to this has some energetic density somewhere in their field, in the body, in the fields around the body. And this causes illness. It causes disease. It causes discomfort. It causes pain all the way up and down your spine. And it causes achy legs, and it causes headaches, and it causes, heart disease. My family has a terrible history of heart disease. Well, they cut out their heart when they left their land. They cut out it's making me, I knew it was coming. They cut out their heart by leaving their place, by feeling so left out, by feeling so, the word is totally just left my mind, by feeling so persecuted, by feeling so separated from the crowd. They cut out their heart and they left it there, and they came to this country and they left their gifts behind as much as they could. They couldn't totally. They tried to stop it. And they didn't deserve that. And I don't deserve that. And you don't deserve that. And that is why I do this work, because when you find something like that, you can't change what you can't see. And so now I can do that healing, not just for myself, but for all of those ancestors who came before me. And sometimes that feels really heavy. And sometimes that feels really tiring. That was last night after kind of the anger came up. I just was like, why me? Why am I always the one? Why do I always have to find the stuff? Because it is so worth it to do the work, because now I get to open access. I get to get my heart back. I get to reclaim my connection to that land that is going to make me feel like I belong somewhere. It's going to make me feel like I'm safe. And it doesn't matter how many people chased us out of town. That was our space. That was our land. We were doing good work for people. And I'm continuing to do that work. And now I get another tool with which to do that. That is why I do this work. So what are we going to do in the meditation tonight? I'm going to say just one more time, this can get really heavy. Pun intended. This can get very heavy emotionally and energetically. And if at any point during this meditation, I'm going to urge you to kind of keep this light. We're looking for the very top layer of the density tonight. We're not doing the heavy lifting where we're going to try to move this whole boulder out of our system. The other thing is, when you do a shift that's that big, I said it felt very foreign to me. When that energy leaves, I feel like, I was telling Emily, like, I feel like I have no structure. Like, I feel like my skeleton is all like wobbly because there's been this density kind of holding things in place. And really what it was doing was causing rigidity in my muscles physically, and in my muscles and my spine physically, but also rigidity in my mental space, rigidity in my fear and my feelings about not belonging and about being left out and about, not, and missing a part of myself. That's because it was done intentionally and passed down through me, through whatever, to and through. So this work can be very heavy, and you might very well need help with it. So what we're going to do in tonight's meditation, we're just going to kind of scan. Oh, where's the density in my field? Where's the density in my body? And at any point along the way, I'm going to encourage you to stop if you feel like you need to. And there are many people you can reach out to, including me, for help with this kind of work. It's really important work, but oftentimes, just as I did, you need someone else to hold the space for you. I don't think I ever would have seen what was underneath the surface of that if I hadn't had somebody holding that space for me, so that I was in a really safe space, so that I could do that exploration. Somebody who's asking me the challenging questions and telling me, stay with the anger. Don't let the anger go. Stay with the anger, because, again, it's uncomfortable for me. So this work is uncomfortable, but it's doable, and it really helps to have some support. So in the meditation, we're just going to kind of scan where's the density, and recognize too, we're going to do some really good affirmations. Affirmations, you don't have to look real deep in and find all the stuff. You can start doing the affirmations. Affirmations work best when you're in a really peaceful state, when you're in a rest and digest, a calm state. So we'll introduce, I already said the one affirmation. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I've just been thinking that over and over and over again. And what happens is, just not to get off too far on a tangent, but I do that every week now. What happens is this density gets reflected back to us as density, and things start hitting against each other. Think about, like if you took two rocks, you're hitting them together, and they're going to be making a bunch of noise, and it's going to be a bunch of pebbles falling off of them. And so this manifests as chaos in our lives. And there's chaos. I mean, it's not the only cause of it, and you're not causing the chaos. Don't take that. I don't mean it in that way at all. But the more density we can clear from our system, first of all, the clearer we are, the clearer our thoughts are, the clearer we're connected to our body and emotions. And also the more harmony and expansion we can have in our field. You can't expand a rock, right? If you loosen the rock up a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, pretty soon, then you've got more and more and more space for expansion. If you're in a very dense space, where do you expand to? So part of the reason that we're shifting density is to make room for new beautiful energy to come in, for expansion to come in, and that brings harmony. So this is a really important step on our healing journey. I think that's all I'm going to say. And again, if you need to stop anywhere in this meditation, if you need help, reach out for help. But we're going to keep this fairly light density, not heavy density, light density tonight. So let's meditate together. So for this meditation, find a comfortable position. You can sit up, you can lie down. Make sure that the position you get in feels safe. If that means that you need to bolster yourself up a little bit, put something under your knees, wrap yourself in a cozy blanket, find a place in your house or your space, wherever you're practicing, that feels safe. This is a good meditation to do in a space where you feel really safe and supported. And as always, let's start with 3 deep oxytocin breaths. We're going to breathe in through the nose. We're going to let the belly float out strongly. We're going to sigh our breath out with an audible ha sound, and that vibrates the vagus nerve. We're just telling the body that it's safe. It's safe to do this work. It's safe to relax. So 3 to 5 of those nice deep oxytocin breaths. I'll do one with you. And as you do your 3 to 5 breaths or even more, just check in with your body. Notice where you're feeling discomfort. That's a good sign that there's some density there. Anywhere that we feel discomfort in the physical body, it's likely that we've got some stagnation and some holding and some muddy vibrations, some energetic density. So let go of any judgments that come up and just check in. You can let go of the oxytocin breath or keep doing it, whatever feels good. I do encourage you to take nice deep breaths in through the nose and let them out through the mouth anytime that you're doing any kind of release work. So you don't have to do every breath like that, but if you feel anything coming up or you're kind of working with some tension in the body, that's a good time to take a nice deep oxytocin breath or at least breathe out through the mouth. So just checking in with the body here. I'm just doing some gentle movements just to kind of see where that density might be in the body. So actually moving your body gently is a good way to find the energetic density. You might not need to do that. You might just be like, oh yeah, my shoulders are really tense. Oh yeah, my lower back is feeling tight. Or you might just move around and notice. Sometimes if we move, if we shake a little bit, I'm shaking my hands now. Sometimes that discharges the density and we don't even need to go any further on the journey of figuring out what it is. So doing a little gentle shake of the arms and the hands, maybe the legs and feet, depending on your position. Maybe you just kind of very gently, we're not shaking the head violently, we're just moving the neck back and forth a little bit. Maybe shrugging the shoulders up and down. Again, just doing a little bit of movement through the body to kind of notice if we can discharge any of that density before we even get further into the meditation. And then as you come still, just notice what part of your body feels uncomfortable, what part of your body is calling your attention. And if your body's not feeling discomfort, you might scan just outside the body and notice if you find anywhere that your attention is drawn to. You might scan outside the body and then out to the right in front of you, you notice just a little something that's catching your attention, or the back especially. We shove a lot of things into what I call the back body. So even beyond the back of your body and the energetic space around your body, if you scan up and down, you might find something that's calling your attention. And we're setting the intention here to find density. So whatever calls your attention is that density. So we're just scanning, we're just noticing where it is. You might find I've got a space kind of in my physical neck, but also behind my neck that feels kind of dense. I've got some density in my hips and my low back. If I scan out into my aura, into the area around my body, that actually is feeling pretty good out to the front and the sides. You can use your hands to do this. And what you're looking for is just a difference. If I'm kind of gently moving my hands with the intention of scanning, if one of my hands stops or I feel a pocket of heat or a pocket of cold, just anything that feels different, or just intuitively you're drawn to an area and it's like, oh, what's that? And so again, what I'm finding is some density kind of behind my neck, in the auric space beyond my body, behind my neck, as well as in my physical neck. And then as I scan kind of down the back, I notice some density in my hips and pelvis, but as I extend kind of my attention out into the field, the density seems like it's mostly in my body. So just getting a feeling. So what might you feel here? You might get the feeling of like a heaviness or almost like a brick. You might get the feeling of a dark space. You might get a feeling of heat or cold or some sort of change of sensation. If you're paying attention to where you have discomfort, what does the discomfort feel like? Does it feel like tension and tightness? That's a good sign there's probably some density there. Does it feel like a stabbing pain? That might be a sign that there's something emotional attached to that. So we're letting go of judgment about this. We're just getting a feeling for the quality. Like if I check into this area behind my neck, I actually get the sense of kind of like a big concrete block that's just sitting on the top of my shoulders behind my neck in that energetic space beyond my body, almost like a cinder block. And that's pretty dense. So just getting a feel for what's there, and again, letting go of judgments about this. Now, this is a great place to stop. If you don't want to go any further, you don't need to. You can do some nice deep breathing through this next part. I'm going to introduce some affirmations. So I will give you the affirmation and you can make this into a beautiful mantra meditation where you just repeat this affirmation out loud or in your head. If you don't want to explore this density anymore, if it feels like you're not quite ready for that, please trust your intuition here. And if you're not moving on, then just begin to introduce this mantra out loud or in your head. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. That's our mantra for tonight. So you can just keep saying that for the rest of this meditation, out loud or in your mind, or a combination. I easily release energetic density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. So continue with that mantra if it feels good to you. If you'd like to move a little deeper into this meditation, please take care of yourself. You can stop at any time, just come back to that mantra and remember you are safe. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. So if you want to explore this density a little further, maybe you've gotten a sense, what does it look like? What does it feel like? Does it have a color? And if you ask something in your energetic field a question, it has to answer you. So it might not come in words, you might get a picture or just a feeling. You might have a feeling of kind of like a tightening of your chest or a feeling of dread or a feeling of fear. There might be a feeling coming up with this. Just getting a sense now of, a little bit more. What is this? What is this area? You can ask this area, where did you come from? How long have you been here? And remember that when we have these things in our energetic field, they are there because at one point they were serving something. They were serving us in this lifetime. They were serving an ancestor. If we're doing ancestral lineage healing, they were serving us in a past life. If this is kind of a karmic healing. So just keep in mind that anything that's in your field here, this density, at one point it was trying to help you. This is not an evil thing. This is not something that's just out to hurt you. This might have been something that was placed there by an ancestor that was making the best decision they had at the time. Maybe you put it there in childhood to protect yourself from trauma. So again, just asking some questions here. You can stop anywhere along the way. If you have some really intense emotions coming up, let go of this part and go back to the mantra. Take deep breaths. You can get up and walk around if you need to. You can go back to shaking your body. Come back to that mantra. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. So now if you want to continue on, you might actually place your hands where this density is, if you can reach, or just set the intention to kind of send energy from your hands to this place. And just ask this area, is there something I can do to help you shift? Is there a way in which I can move my body? Is there an emotion I can feel and process? Is there a memory I can look at? Is there someone who needs forgiveness? Is there someone who needs me to get angry at them? Just kind of feel into that and notice what answers come up. And if nothing comes up for any of this, that's okay. You may have to come back and repeat this. You may have to reach out for help. And that's okay. Sometimes we need someone else to hold this space for us in order for us to explore these dense areas. They've been there for a long time, and it can be really scary to think about shifting. They can feel like part of our very structure energetically. And so the idea of shifting this, of removing it completely, of releasing it, could really send you kind of off balance. So there's no rush here. We're just exploring this a little bit. So as we step into sound here, and as I add Reiki to this transmission to hold space for you, to hold space for this density to shift as it's ready to, everything we're doing here is for the highest good. Everything we're doing here is at your own pace, is at the pace of what feels just a little uncomfortable. This is always going to be a little uncomfortable. This work tends to be uncomfortable, but it does not have to be overwhelming. It does not have to be painful. Just allowing now, just even maybe the idea of shift to come in. And as we move into the sound portion, I want you to stick with that mantra. And if you're in a space where you can say this out loud, it really does reverberate into your system more fully. But you can also just think in your head. I easily release energetic density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. And just continue with that mantra. I'm just going to add a little healing sound to this. Way ha say hi, way hi hi oh, say say how I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am free. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. As you're ready, releasing the mantra, knowing that the reverberations of those vibrations will continue to invite shift into that density a little bit as at a time. And you can always come back to this. You can always reach out for help one-on-one. Taking a few last deep breaths here in through the nose, sigh them out through the mouth. Add that audible ha sound. I easily release energetic density from my body and my energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. Coming back to your body now. Continuing to breathe deeply if it calls to you, or just letting your breath release. Maybe begin to slowly move your feet and ankles, your toes and fingers, circling your wrists and hands. Very gently bringing yourself back. Noticing any shift in that density, any shift in your level of pain or discomfort. Releasing any judgments that come up about the shift or lack thereof. Just coming fully still for the last moment here. And once more, repeat out loud if possible. I easily release density from my body and energetic fields. I am safe. I am free. Sat Nam. The truth of your identity is that you are a powerful energy worker with the ability to shift this density, to bring more lightness, more expansion, more clarity and harmony into your body and energetic fields. Take one last nice deep breath. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Have a buoyant rest of your evening and week, and I will see you in 3 weeks for our next Wind Down Wednesdays.